UN 영어뉴스 미켈란젤로스 데이비드 and 10 artworks that caused a scandal. As a Florida principal was forced to resign after students were shown Michelangelo's statue of David, Kelly Grobier takes a look at the history of censorship in the art world. When the principal of a charter school in Florida was recently forced to resign after parents alleged that their children had been exposed to pornography when shown photos of the Renaissance master Michelangelo's sculpture of the biblical figure David, many around the world were surprised. That itself is surprising, almost since the moment that the 17 feet high nude marble statue was chiseled into scandalous shape in around 1504. Michelangelo's masterpiece has stood its ground against perennial accusations of indecency. The sculpture hadn't even strutted its way through the 16th century before being fitted with a ludicrous loincloth of metal fig leaves to mitigate its immodesty. It was only in the middle of the 20th century that similar leaves were finally plucked from the groin of a cast replica of the famous statue on display at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, which had been given to Queen Victoria in 1857. The controversial decision taken by the board of Tallahassee Classical School to pressure Principal Hope Carascula to quit provides the perfect opportunity to reflect on which works in modern history, while considered by some observers to be unacceptably shocking, have changed the way we think about art. What follows are 10 works created in the years since the fig leaves were removed from the V&A's David that have shocked contemporary sensibilities and helped redefine the very essence of art. Mark Quinn, Self, 1991. 1. Mark Quinn, Self, 1991. Every 5 years, over the course of 5 months, British artist Mark Quinn siphons off 5 liters of his own blood and spills them into a translucent refrigerated mold of his face. The result is an ever-emerging series of self-portraits into which the artist can legitimately claim to have poured more of himself than any artist that came before him. For some observers, Quinn's ongoing series Self is nothing more than a gruesome and vampiric stunt. For others, the work embodies a poignant and daring contribution to the tradition of self-representation to which such great artists as Rembrandt, Van Gogh, and Cindy Sherman have contributed. One that profoundly highlights the fragility of being. Alan Jones, Chair, 1969. 2. Alan Jones, Chair, 1969, unveiled two accusations that his creator, British pop artist Alan Jones, treated objects like women and vice versa. Chair, along with the companion pieces, headstand and table, contorted, scantily clad female mannequins into an ergonomically engineered suit of scurrilously rude furniture. On International Women's Day in March 1986, the work was dosed with paint stripper by a pair of activists appalled by the sculpture's chauvinist sensibility. The acid ate away at the face and the neck, melting the awkward somersault in which the previous work was forever frozen into a desperate duck and roll. Piero Manzoni, Murder the Artista, 1961. 3. Piero Manzoni, Murder the Artista, 1961. If Duchamp's unused receptacle of human waste could be embraced by the art world as an aesthetic object in its own right, it is perhaps unsurprising that at some stage an artist would experiment with the excrement itself and attempt to pass it off as a work of art. In 1961, Italian avant-garde artist Piero Manzoni, who a year earlier left observers aghast when he presented a balloon filled with his own breath as a work of art, did just that, cramming into 90 tin cans 2,700 grams of his own fats. The work is thought to be an elaborate response to a derisory comment that his father, who owned a canning factory, once made to him, likening his work to excrement. In 2016, one of his son's cans sold at auction for €275,000. Erased the Cunning Drawing, Robert Rauschenberg, 1953. 4. Erased the Cunning Drawing, Robert Rauschenberg, 1953. In 1953, the same year that the curators at the V&A believed modern eyes could handle David's genitals, the U.S. artist Robert Rauschenberg tried his own hand at the art of stripping things away, curious to know if a work of art could be created by removing marks from a surface with an eraser, rather than adding them with the pencil, brush, or chisel, as artists conventionally do. Rauschenberg convinced his friend, the Dutch-American abstractionist Willem de Kooning, to sacrifice a recent drawing of his to the experiment. The result is a paper scrubbed free of any discernible picture, challenging observers to decide whether the imageless image is an image at all, or whether the real work on display is the empty frame that surrounds the absence, a sculptural holding place for endless artistic loss. Judy Chicago Dinner Party, 1979. 5. Judy Chicago Dinner Party, 1979, consisting of 39 place settings commemorating the contribution of women to cultural history, from Sappho to Virginia Woolf. U.S. artist Judy Chicago's triangularly constructed banquet table has been both acclaimed for its pioneering perspective and derided for its shocking vulgarity. The work is dominated by almost 20 hand-painted china plates, many of which are decorated with a blossoming vulva-like butterfly symbol. Believing that the work has too many vaginas, contemporary British artist Cornelia Parker scorned the installation in The Guardian as all about Judy Chicago's ego rather than the poor women she is supposed to be elevating. We are all reduced to vaginas, which is a bit depressing. Richard Serra, Tilted Arc, 1981. 6. Richard Serra, Tilted Arc, 1981. More than one iconic wall fell in 1989. In the dead of night, on 5th March, 8 months before sledgehammers began pounding the Berlin Wall, a team of construction workers descended on Federal Plaza in New York City to slice into pieces a 120 feet long, 12 feet high, controversial barricade of steel that had been erected 8 years earlier, contending that the work, a groundbreaking sculpture by the U.S. artist Richard Serra, provided shelter for terrorists, vermin, and vandals alike. A jury concluded the minimalist sculpture should be removed and hauled off to a warehouse. Christo and Jean Claude Surrounded Islands, 1983. 7. Christo and Jean Claude Surrounded Islands, 1983. Not everyone who looked upon the 11 islands in Miami's Biscayne Bay, skirted thoroughly in pink polypropylene fabric for 2 weeks in May 1983 by the artists Christo and Jean Claude, was seduced by its fairy tale magic. Environmentalists protested the work's installation, worried about the long-term effect of the 6.5 million square feet of synthetic plastic stretched across the habitats of manatees and nesting ospreys. The dialogue that constructing the work generated, which forced local officials and residents to discuss the fragility of the environment in which they lived, was among the artist aims. Tracy Emin, My Bad, 1998. 8. Tracy Emin, My Bad, 1998. Though the bed, as an archetypal object, has served as an indispensable prop in some of the greatest works of Western art, from Titian's Venus of Urbino to Van Gogh's bedroom in Arles, from Goya's alternately nude and dressed Mazas to Henry Fugle's devilish The Nightmare, public outrage at the installation by British artist Tracy Emin of her Disabled My Bed for the 1998 Turner Prize exhibition was intense and sustained. The sight of a depressive episode in the artist's life, surrounded by the material debris of a toothless psyche. The rumpled bed quickly became Exhibit A for those contending that contemporary art had lost its way. Defenders of the work were surprised that more than 80 years after Marcel Duchamp's urinal, a messy bed could spark such outrage, and wondered whether the real objection was that a woman should so brazenly set up a residency in a men's museum. David Sonny, Shark, 2005. 9. David Sonny, Shark, 2005. Ripping off of British artist Damien Hirst's audacious installation, The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living, 1991, which featured a howling shark suspended in a formaldehyde solution. Czech artist David Sonny's arresting victory dared to float before visitors a hog-tied sculpture of the deposed Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. For some, the work came too close to casting Hussein in the role of victim. For others, the piece was gratuitously graphic. The scheduled exhibition of the controversial work at a museum in Middelkerk, Belgium, in early 2006 was ultimately cancelled by decree of the town's mayor Michel Landwitt, out of fear that certain population groups would find the work too provocative. Paul McCarthy, 3, 2014. 10. Paul McCarthy, 3, 2014. Occasionally, the urge to censor a controversial work has been acted upon by offended observers rather than cautious curators. Such was the case in October 2014, when U.S. artist Paul McCarthy's huge inflatable sculpture tree, erected as a Christmas display on the Place Vendôme in Paris, was fatally toppled by vandals and subsequently deflated once the sculpture's close resemblance to the shape of a sex prop was pointed out by commentators, a kinship that was then impossible to unsee. There was no protecting the colossal work from assault, nor did the artist himself escape unscathed. An outraged attendee at the sculpture's installation confronted McCarthy and slapped his face 3 times before zipping off like a popped balloon into the crowd.